Picture a perfect summer day at a public beach. Families building sandcastles, kids splashing in gentle waves, the sound of seagulls and laughter mixing with the rhythm of the ocean. And then imagine a voice cutting through that peace like nails on a chalkboard. "Excuse me! This is my private area. You need to move." That's Karen Beachmont, 50 years old. Standing there in her designer coral pink bikini and white sun hat, gold bangles glinting in the sunshine, pointing at a young mother and her two small children who'd just spread their towels on the sand. And what happens next will make you question everything you thought you knew about public spaces, entitlement, and what really matters when a child's life hangs in the balance. Marcus Thompson, a 28-year-old lifeguard with 6 years of experience saving lives, watched from his elevated red tower as this entitled woman actually roped off a section of public beach with coral ribbons and a private reserved sign, creating her own little kingdom, complete with a massive white canopy tent, multiple loungers, and enough accessories to stock a beach resort. While Isabella Garcia, a hard-working single mother with 2 young kids, stood there confused, holding her daughter Sophia's hand, her son Diego already crying because the mean lady was yelling. "Ma'am," Bella said quietly, her voice tired from working double shifts as a nurse just to afford this one beach day for her kids. "The sign at the entrance says this is public beach. I didn't see any reserved areas." But Karen, she wasn't having any of it. Her face already pink from too much sun and rage, snapping back. "Do you see this setup? Do you see this tent and these loungers? Obviously, this area is taken. I've been coming to this beach for 20 years, and I always reserve this spot. Now take your screaming children somewhere else before I call beach management." Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to Rayan Review 2.0 for more real, emotional HOA stories. The thing about Karen that made this situation so much worse was that she'd literally driven wooden stakes into the public sand and tied rope around them, creating a barrier that blocked off the best spot on the beach, the area closest to the water where the sand was firmest and the ocean access was easiest. And she'd done this at 6 a.m. before any families arrived, claiming about 400 square feet of public property for herself, her husband, who hadn't even shown up yet, and apparently nobody else, despite the beach being packed with families who'd paid for parking and had just as much right to be there. Marcus climbed down from his tower, his red rescue buoy slung across his athletic shoulder, and walked over with the calm authority of someone who'd dealt with entitled beachgoers before, saying professionally, "Excuse me, ma'am, but you cannot rope off sections of public beach. This area is available to everyone on a first-come basis, and those stakes need to come out." Karen's response was to laugh, actually throw her head back and laugh, her platinum blonde hair catching the sun, before saying, "Young man, do you know who my husband is? He's a major donor to this city. We pay for this beach through our taxes. These people," she gestured dismissively at Bella and her kids, "probably don't even live in this town. They're tourists, outsiders. They can find their own spot." The irony, the absolute irony that nobody knew yet, was that Bella wasn't a tourist at all. She'd grown up in this beach town, had spent every summer of her childhood on this exact beach, and now worked 60-hour weeks as an ER nurse at the local hospital, saving the lives of people like Karen who came in demanding special treatment. And this was her one day off this month, her one chance to give her kids a normal childhood memory. But she just stood there quietly, too exhausted to fight, starting to gather her kids to move because conflict wasn't worth ruining their day. That's when little Sophia, 5 years old with her pink ruffled swimsuit and arm floaties, looked up at Karen with innocent confusion and asked, "Why are you so mean? My mommy says the beach belongs to everybody. And if you think that innocent question from a child might soften Karen's heart, you'd be tragically wrong, because Karen actually bent down to the child's level and said, "Because, sweetie, some people are more important than others, and you need to learn that early." If you're feeling this story, hit that like button and share this video to support Rayan Review 2.0. Marcus felt his professional composure crack just slightly, because in 6 years of lifeguarding he'd seen riptides, jellyfish swarms, and drunk spring breakers, but he'd never seen someone speak to a 5-year-old with such casual cruelty, and he said firmly, "Ma'am, I'm going to ask you one more time to remove these barriers, or I'll have to call Chief Rodriguez and have you escorted from the beach." Karen pulled out her phone with a triumphant smile. "Oh, I'll call someone all right. I'll call my husband, who will call the mayor, and we'll see whose job is on the line here." But before she could dial, something happened that nobody expected. 3-year-old Diego, who'd been playing at the water's edge about 15 feet away while the adults argued, suddenly got hit by a wave that was bigger than usual, lost his footing in the shifting sand, and went under, his little blue shark swim trunks disappearing beneath the turquoise water as the undertow pulled him out. Bella's scream cut through everything. That primal mother's scream that makes every parent's blood run cold. "Diego! My baby!" And she started running toward the water. But Marcus was already moving, his training kicking in instantly, his powerful legs covering the distance in seconds, diving into the surf without hesitation. And in that moment, in that critical handful of seconds, Karen stood frozen in her roped-off private area, her phone still in her hand, suddenly understanding that her tent and her loungers and her reserved spot meant absolutely nothing when a child was drowning 20 feet away. Marcus reached Diego in less than 15 seconds, grabbing the toddler who was coughing and crying, holding him against his chest with one arm while using his rescue buoy for support, kicking back toward shore with powerful strokes. And the entire beach had stopped, everyone watching, some people recording on their phones, and when Marcus emerged from the water carrying Diego, who was crying but breathing, handing him to Bella, who collapsed on the sand, sobbing and holding her son, checking him over with the practiced hands of a nurse but the desperate heart of a mother. The crowd that had gathered started clapping, but Marcus wasn't focused on applause. He was focused on Karen, who stood there with her hand over her mouth, her perfect makeup running with tears, because she'd just watched a child nearly drown while she was arguing about sand, about territory, about her imaginary rights to rope off public property, and the weight of that realization was crushing her like the waves that had pulled Diego under. Chief Rodriguez arrived within minutes, and the first thing he did was start dismantling Karen's rope barriers, pulling up her stakes, and saying in a voice that carried across the beach, "This is public property, ma'am. And what you've done here is actually illegal. You've obstructed public access and created a safety hazard. Because guess what? When that little boy went into the water, these ropes slowed down his mother and could have slowed down my lifeguard. Want to hear more life-changing HOA tales every week? Subscribe to Rayan Review 2.0 and never miss the next twist." Karen tried to protest, tried to say something about her husband and donations and 20 years of tradition. But her voice came out as a whisper because she was staring at Diego, who was wrapped in a towel in his mother's arms, still coughing, and the reality of what almost happened was written all over her sunburned face. "Ma'am," Chief Rodriguez continued, his tone professional but cold, "you have two choices. You can pack up your excessive setup, apologize to this family, and enjoy the beach like everyone else in the designated shared space, or you can leave entirely, and we'll be filing a report about the illegal barriers." But here's where the story takes a turn that's both heartbreaking and beautiful. Bella, exhausted Bella who'd been working herself to death, who'd been verbally abused and dismissed, whose son had just nearly drowned while Karen argued about rope barriers, looked up from her crying child and said something that nobody expected. "She can stay. It's okay. There's room for everyone." The silence that followed those words was deafening, because in that moment, this tired nurse who had every right to be furious, who could have pressed charges, who could have made Karen's life hell on social media with all those phone recordings, chose grace instead of revenge, chose to teach her children a lesson more valuable than justice, that you respond to cruelty with humanity, not because people deserve it, but because that's who you are. Karen broke, and I mean completely broke, her designer sunglasses falling off as she sobbed, mascara running down her face, and she did something that probably nobody who knew her would believe. She walked over to Bella, got down on her knees in the sand, her white linen cover-up getting dirty, her careful beach setup forgotten, and said through tears, "I am so sorry. I am so incredibly sorry. Your son could have died, and I was worried about sand. About a spot on the beach, what is wrong with me?" Marcus watched this transformation, with the wisdom of someone who'd seen people's true characters revealed in crisis. And he said quietly to Chief Rodriguez, "Let her stay." And the chief nodded, because sometimes the best punishment is watching someone truly see themselves for the first time. The rest of the afternoon was remarkable in ways that nobody could have scripted. Karen dismantled her excessive setup, keeping just one umbrella and 2 towels, and then, without being asked, she helped Bella set up her family's area, gave the kids her expensive inflatable flamingo to play with, shared snacks from her designer cooler, and spent 2 hours building sand castles with Sofia and Diego, her gold bangles getting sandy, her perfect beach waves getting messy, her entitled armor cracking with every genuine laugh from these children she'd tried to chase away. Marcus checked on Diego 3 more times that afternoon, professional to the core, and each time he smiled at the scene. Karen, the woman who'd claimed Public Beach as private property, now sitting in the sand teaching a 5-year-old how to find shells, her white sun hat shading not just herself, but the little girl beside her. When it was time to leave, as the sun started setting and families packed up their towels, Karen did something else unexpected. She approached Marcus and said, "Thank you for saving him, and thank you for not having me arrested because I deserved it. I've been coming to this beach for 20 years, thinking it was mine, thinking my money and my husband's position made me special. But today a 28-year-old lifeguard and a exhausted nurse taught me that the only thing that makes anyone special is how they treat people when it costs them something." Thanks for watching Rayan Review 2.0, where every story teaches a lesson, like share and subscribe for more emotional neighborhood dramas. Because the truth is, we all have a little Karen inside us, that voice that says we deserve more space, more comfort, more consideration than the people around us. And we use whatever excuse we can find. We've been coming here longer, we paid more taxes, we're more important, we're more successful. But when you strip away all the ropes and barriers and designer beach tents, we're all just humans sharing the same shore, breathing the same salt air, watching our kids play in the same waves. And the beach doesn't care about your bank account or your husband's connections or how many years you've been claiming the same spot, because the tide comes in and washes away every footprint equally, both the entitled ones and the humble ones. And that's nature's way of reminding us that we're temporary visitors on this earth, guests who should be grateful for the space we're given rather than demanding more than our share. Bella posted about the incident later, not to shame Karen, but to thank Marcus and highlight how public servants like lifeguards are underappreciated and underpaid. And the post went viral, leading to a fundraiser that bought new safety equipment for the beach patrol and funded CPR training for parents. Karen, for her part, spent the rest of the summer volunteering for a beach cleanup organization. And when she showed up at the beach each weekend, she came with just a simple towel and a new humility, often helping overwhelmed parents carry their gear or watching kids so tired mothers could take a breath. 6 months later, at the end-of-season beach patrol ceremony, Bella and her kids attended to see Marcus receive a life-saving commendation, and sitting in the audience, applauding louder than anyone, was Karen, wearing a simple blue dress instead of her designer beachwear, her platinum blonde hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. And after the ceremony, she pulled Bella aside and said, "I've wanted to tell you this for months. My mother drowned when I was 8 years old, at a beach not unlike this one. And I think I spent 40 years trying to control beach spaces because I was trying to control the ocean that took her, trying to make it mine so it couldn't hurt me. But all I did was become the danger that almost took your son. And you had every right to hate me, but instead you showed me grace. And that changed everything." The 2 women hugged, and Sofia and Diego got to blow the ceremonial lifeguard whistle, and Marcus watched from the platform thinking about how a single moment can branch into 2 completely different futures. One where tragedy creates bitterness and division, and one where near tragedy creates transformation and community. And the difference between those futures isn't about what happens to us. It's about how we choose to respond, whether we're the Karen building barriers or the Bella tearing them down, whether we're claiming more than our share or making room for everyone, whether we're teaching kids that some people are more important or teaching them that every person deserves dignity, space, and a chance to enjoy the simple joy of a summer day at the beach. Because at the end of the day, the ocean doesn't recognize property lines. The sand doesn't care about your tax bracket, and when a child is drowning, the only thing that matters is whether there are people nearby who remember that life is sacred, that community is essential, and that the best spots on any beach aren't the ones closest to the water. They're the ones where humans remember how to be human, where entitled tourists become humble volunteers, where angry confrontations transform into sandcastle collaborations, and where a simple act of grace from a tired nurse becomes the catalyst for a grown woman to finally, at 50 years old, learn the lesson her mother's drowning should have taught her decades ago, that water is stronger than ropes, that tides don't respect barriers, and that the only thing worth claiming on any beach is the choice to be kind. Because everything else, the perfect spot, the designer setup, the private territory gets washed away eventually, but kindness builds something that no wave can destroy.